from our temporary studio here for 1 week here in Miami at the Move, whatever it is. What's it called?
The Move Miami.
The Move Miami. So if you are a creator in Miami, God only knows what that means. If you are a creator here in Miami, and you want to come use the studio, this is a great studio. If you are an OnlyFans chick who wants to start a podcast because people really enjoy your personality, or if you're a struggling rapper and you want to start building your brand, or, you know, whatever the case may be, come on down here to the Move and get yourself on camera because people are waiting to hear from you. That's the whole thing now. Don't you realize that? That people are, you need to be heard from. That's what's happening. Where's Miami at? That's what we're all thinking. Where are they at? I've been thinking a lot recently about the Mamdani win in New York City because like all of the people that I talk to in Florida are like, everybody's coming to Florida. And I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is. I talk to realtors in New York. Contracts are up in New York City. They're going crazy in the Hamptons, meaning people are still buying real estate in New York. This idea that like everybody's gonna come down to a foam party with Marco Rubio and plot the Venezuela invasion while railing lines of coke off someone's cock, which though it sounds nice, isn't the best foreign policy. The idea that people are going to just do that because we elected bin Laden in New York doesn't necessarily ring true. I think there's going to be people are going to have to get a little wet on the subway first. Got to be a couple of stabbings, a couple of shootings, couple of stickings. You're not just going to pick up and head down to Miami unless someone you know gets slashed. People used to get slashed all the time in New York. If slashing comes back, the thing about a good slashing is you wear the scar, so it comes up. It's not like just a mugging or something that you can forget or you lost money on Bitcoin or whatever. This is like an actual scar. You show up to a place and people are horrified by the gash in your face. If that starts happening on the subway again, you could see a world in which people come down here to Miami to hang out with Marco Rubio and the people that want to invade Venezuela. Whatever Venezuelan expats he met down here in Miami that think we need to be there in Venezuela, invading Venezuela, which is, of course, insane. But I was thinking about it, the New York affordability, and I was thinking about why it is so expensive to live in New York. It's always been expensive, but why it's gotten so absurd. Why has it become so ridiculous? And I think part of it, and if I was somebody who is the mayor of New York City, and get the average condo price up right now in New York, get the average one-bedroom rent, and get the average condo price. The average price to buy in New York City, all of New York City, not just Manhattan. We're talking about the 5 boroughs of New York City. We got to do New York. We don't want Manhattan. We want the average condo price in New York City. That's 5 boroughs. It's not just Manhattan. And that's going to, I don't know what that number is. I know in Manhattan it's around $2 million, you know, 2.6 million or something silly. You don't have to live in Manhattan, okay? I don't know that they have that number. Do they not have that number? They keep showing us Manhattan. But I'm wondering if there's an average what about average one-bedroom rent in New York City? We know that the median condo price in Manhattan is about $1 million. That's the middle of the market. And the average condo price is about 2.5. So the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in New York City is around $4,450 a month. $4,450 a month. Okay? That is psychotic. Now it varies a little bit. Some people are saying it's closer to 35 and some people are saying 42. neighborhood apartment size amenities can cause these averages to fluctuate. But that's what you're paying for a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City. Now, that is not a large apartment. You know, in most cases, it is a entry-level 1-bedroom apartment. You cannot have a guest. You cannot have friends over for dinner. You really can't raise a child in a 1-bedroom apartment. I know some people are going to say, well, I've raised that kid. Okay, it can be done. Anything can be done. You can raise people in a hut. But this is an incredibly expensive 1-bedroom apartment. Now I want you to get up this. I want you to find the statistic for how much real estate in New York is owned by foreign nationals. I want you to look at that by percentage. I want you to look at it by percentage. I wonder if they're going to have that. How much real estate in New York City is owned by foreign nationals, meaning people that do not live in America? Okay? So here's our AI overview, okay? It says, while it is difficult to pinpoint an exact percentage, recent estimates suggest foreign nationals own a small fraction of New York's real estate, with foreign buyers accounting for about 7% of all residential purchases in the state and about 27% of all real estate value. So number one, that's not small. 30% is absolutely not small. The percentage of value that they own. And I believe it's much higher than 7% because I don't think this is taking into account shell corporations where you cannot trace who owns the property. One of the big reasons that New York City is not affordable is because New York City, like other cities, has become a vertical money laundering scheme. And there are people that are buying real estate in New York for the sole purpose of laundering money, to get it out of the country that they live, or to wash it in New York City real estate because they earned it smuggling drugs, arms, children, women, people across borders. And the way to wash that money is to buy real estate in New York City under a shell corporation, an LLC, and disguise the ownership interest in it. And if you own real estate in New York, you have number one, it's a good investment because the city it has the largest gross domestic product of any city in the United States. Second only, it flips with Tokyo usually for the number one in the world. So it's a thriving economy. People are always going to want to live in New York. And you can always rent real estate if you own it in New York City, and usually for a high value. But a lot of these people are not renting. They're not renting, they're owning these condos because they don't want their money to be taxed or in a bank account where they live. Now you can get up Shell Corp, start looking this stuff up. Shell Corp owners in New York City. This is the biggest problem that we have. This is a problem that I don't think Mamdani will do anything about this. Okay? I don't think he will do anything about all of the different ways you can purchase a real estate. Right. New data, this is from September of 2023, 37% of Manhattan properties owned by secretive LLC shell companies. 37%. Now we're finding the real number. They said 7%. It's actually a relatively small fraction. Now we're seeing what it really is. 37% of properties in Manhattan, no one knows who the fuck owns them. That's 40% of the city. No one has any clue who owns them because they're owned by secretive shell corporations. Now, you might say, for example, why would people buy with a secretive corporation? Is there any logical reason for it? Yes, I've done it because you want privacy. I don't want people showing up to my house trying to kill me because they found out so people that are known people, use shell corporations? Absolutely, because they don't want people to know where they live. I'm one of those people. I don't want you to know where I live. You're all crazy. And if you're all not crazy, if one of you is crazy, that's enough. So I don't want you to know where I live. If I was a regular person, a finance person, and I made money and nobody knew who I was, I wouldn't care. So there's a legitimate reason to use a shell code. Now, if you were really determined to kill me, you can come kill me wherever because I advertise where I'm going to be publicly. But there's a lot of people, whatever degree of privacy they're looking for, you have a shell corp. But most of this isn't that. That might account for 0.5% of the 37%, maybe 0.25%. The vast majority of these people, okay, are trying to hide the fact that they own property in New York. A lot of this property is empty. Why in New York City do you walk down a street like Billionaires Row and there's no lights on any of the buildings? Because no one lives there. They don't rent any of these properties out. All of these properties are essentially banks. They're a store of value for somebody's money, and it's usually ill-gotten gains. A lot of it's illegal money, some of it isn't. But who does that help? It's a great question. Who does it help if billionaires from all over the world just buy real estate in New York City? Well, Michael Bloomberg, billionaire who ran New York City, was quoted as saying, "We want all the world's billionaires." Why wouldn't we want the richest people in the world to launder their money in New York? After all, maybe they'll spend a week or two a year in New York City. They'll go to a restaurant or two. Maybe they'll stash their kid at NYU or Columbia. Why wouldn't we want that? It's a global city. It's part of New York City's character. Why wouldn't we want the wealthiest people in the world to use New York City as a vertical money laundering scheme where they purchase large amounts of real estate and drive the cost of real estate up for people that actually live in New York, people that actually live there? But this, again, is the promise of globalization. This is the great promise of globalization, that money can cross borders, people can cross borders. You have an endless supply of labor if you want. You have an endless supply of capital. It can go all over the world. It's a free market. Everything's free. There's no tariffs. Goods are moving, services, people. Why shouldn't people be able to come into a city, buy all the real estate, make all the buildings empty, and then drive the cost up so that no one can afford to live there? It's a great idea. This was the idea that we all grew up with. The magical idea of globalization. The magical idea that the entire world was going to be flat, like Thomas Friedman said at the New York Times, everybody was going to be happy. And there's not going to be any more wars. There won't be wars anymore because we're going to live in a globalized, interconnected world where, because of the internet, everybody's going to be able to fight it out online. So there'll be no more wars. Well, how'd that work out? How'd that work out for everybody in Gaza? Do they feel like there's no more wars? But this was the promise of the global system. The idea that we had to take in people, and Trump's even saying now we have to do, from China, the H-1B visas. They got to come in. We got to have people come in from India because we don't have those skills in America. Well, whose idea was it to not build those skills in America? Whose idea was it to bring people in from China and India that can do the tech jobs that we're not training Americans to do? I had an argument with my aunt this summer about immigration. And I said, well, legal immigration also is something that should be regulated and maybe curtailed. And she goes, well, who's going to be your doctor? She goes, my doctor's from Pakistan. Are we importing all of our doctors from Pakistan? Does that make any sense to anyone, that in the United States of America, we somehow are not creating doctors? We're not training people that grew up here to be doctors, and we're bringing people in from Pakistan to be... Isn't Pakistan a dysfunctional society, to be quite honest? Is the idea that the United States of America, that every one of our children wants to flick their bean on OnlyFans, and instead of becoming a doctor, and that we have to bring in doctors from Pakistan, a country that we suspected that was harboring the fugitives from 9/11? Does that make any sense to anybody? It does to Jennifer Welch. It does to a lot of these like wine mom drunk white liberals that think it's so great. They love, as brilliant Rachel Feinstein, the comedian, says, like her mother likes pronouncing the names in the back of a taxi. But does this make any sense to anybody? And my aunt says this sitting on my couch. She has children. Some of them are doing great. Others are getting by. They're doing fine. They're not bad people. But they're not killing it. They're not crushing it. And she's excited about bringing in doctors from Pakistan. That's what boomers would rather do. Boomers would rather bring in doctors from Pakistan while their own children die on the street. That is generally what they would rather do. To prove the point that they are good people, they would rather bring in doctors from war-torn third world countries than try to figure out how to get people in the United States of America to be doctors. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. This is the craziest way to run a society. To let Chinese amusement park tycoons and Russian fertilizer magnates buy $20 million fake apartments all over New York City, drive $400,000 a year lawyers out because they can't afford it, and then tell everyone else to go fuck themselves and then wonder why Mamdani got elected? Does anyone? And then wonder why this guy got elected? This is the craziest way to run a society. And then to say that, oh, there's jobs in tech. They're the only jobs left, by the way. These jobs in tech are not like, they're it. No matter what kind of company you own, it'll be a tech company eventually because everything's going to have a strong digital component. Most of it already does. So you're going, well, we need to bring in these people from China and India on H-1B visas because we don't have that pool of talent in America. Well, shouldn't we be building it? Shouldn't we be building that pool of talent in America if these are some of the only jobs? Let's look at Trump here. And I do think, unfortunately, this kind of is the end of, and I say unfortunately, not because I care, truly, but I say unfortunately because it seems to not be doing anything good for anyone. This is the end of the Trump administration. This is the beginning of the lame duck presidency. It's obvious to everyone, even his most ardent supporters show up to the White House, like Laura Ingraham, and she's kind of shocked on what the hell's going on. Now we'll start, 3 years of talking about the ballroom. He will trail off. He will get older. He's adorned the White House in gold. Epstein's going to suck the oxygen out of a lot of this. We're going to talk about that a little later on. Apparently AI, by the way, the only thing I'm sure of about AI, I'm not an expert, is that AI, as soon as we have robots running around this country, they'll all be pedophiles too. There's no one in power that will apparently just not be a pedophile. All these robots will be pedophile. 100% will do a pedophile robots. Our first robot president will be a pedophile. I know that. It's the only thing I know. Our first AI robot president will absolutely be a pedophile. Here's Laura Ingraham discussing the H-1B with Trump.
This idea of hundreds of thousands of foreign students in the United States. We have about 350,000 Chinese. One point during COVID, you were going to, push to, get them out, but that was pulled back. You've said as many as 600,000 Chinese students could come to the United States. Why, sir, is that a pro-MAGA position when so many American kids want to go to school and there are places not for them and these universities are getting rich off Chinese money?
Sure. Never said about China, but we do have a lot of people coming in from China. We always have, China and other countries. We also have a massive system of colleges and universities. And if we were to cut that in half, which perhaps makes some people happy, you would have half the colleges in the United States go out of business.
So what?
Well, I think that's a big deal.
Are they fans
You would have the
of the United States?
Yeah, but you would have, as you know, historically, black colleges and universities would all be out of business. You would have a
because of Chinese. Hold on, stop this for a second. He's arguing that HSBC's historic black colleges will go out of business if Chinese students can't go there. This is the craziest argument I've ever. Can you imagine Chinese kids coming over to go to the black college? Do you imagine how nuts their parents would go? You go where? Like, can you imagine the Chinese students coming here to go to the black college? Does anyone believe that? Does anyone believe that we're letting 400,000 Chinese students in so that they can keep black colleges going? I mean, how stupid do they think we all are? It's really getting to a point where it's kind of insane. Is that where the Chinese students are going to come in here to go to Howard? Is that what the Chinese students are doing? They're keeping black colleges going? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. Keep going here.
Universities would
So
go
we're
down the
dependent on
tubes.
China to keep our university
not China,
system
but
going?
I think it's good to have, I actually think it's good to have outside countries. Look, I want to be able to get along with the
They're
world.
not the French. They're the Chinese. They spy on us. They steal our intellectual property.
What, do you think the French are better?
Yeah.
Really? I don't know. I'll tell you, I'm not so sure. We've had a lot of problems with the French, where we get taxed very unfairly on our technology, where they put 25% taxes on.
So basically, what we're finding out here is that the tech people that gave him a lot of money are now demanding that they said we're not going to be able to compete with China in this AI sphere unless we are bringing in Chinese students, Indian students to do these jobs. We don't have that pool of talent here. We don't have that skill set, and we need it. And sorry, I know you ran on this whole platform of like, what's good for America or good for American students, but here's the reality. We don't give a shit about any of that because none of this was ever about America to the tech people, which we knew, by the way. They go, none of this was really about America. It was about creating this thing we're doing as quickly as possible. Before anyone notices, we need to give birth to this thing before anyone notices. We're giving birth to a demon, and we'd like to do it quickly and quietly. Bring in the Chinese and the Indian students to help us give birth to this demon quickly and quietly so it can eat all life on Earth. And we don't want to be questioned. We can't have fat people from Texas giving birth to this demon. Their fat little fingers are too big. We need Indians and Chinese quietly giving birth to this AI demon so that we can pledge our loyalty to it and it can run our lives. That's kind of what is, by the way, that's literally what is happening. And they say that probably they may not use the word demon, give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's what they want. It's artificial life created and invested with an insane amount of power, and all of these people just want it here. It's already kind of here. They want it here more than it is right now, because if not, China will get it. So fine. And by the way, we discussed this a lot. I don't know that there is an alternative. And certainly, even if there is, no one's entertaining it. And I have no power here sitting at this desk. So what's coming is coming is coming is coming. And what's coming is an AI demon that is going to be birthed by this administration. They're going to birth an AI demon. And in order to do that, that's really what it is. That's what they may call it a god. They may call it a god. I look at the people creating it, I choose to call it a demon. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. One man's God's another man's demon. But at the end of the day, this is what they want to do. They want to give birth to the most powerful technology that has ever existed on Earth. Let me tell you right now, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about ethos. It is an online. You actually do what you did in college. Here's the good news. You know that side job you had in college? That's your real job now. That's when college ended. College is just, now it's just a place to go and socialize and have fun and go to parties and get laid and whatever. It's no longer preparing you for the world. It's doing the exact opposite. It's miring you in debt, getting you to develop a substance abuse problem and sending you out into the world completely clueless. And the idea that anyone is keeping that system going, okay? Anyone. I mean, people graduate here. The average college debt in America is approximately 30 grand with an undergraduate degree, with the average federal student loan debt around $40,000. However, this number varies significantly based on factors like the type of institution, Graduate students typically carry much higher debt, around $100,000 on average. A lot of people that I know, and by the way, if you're in $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 worth of debt, it's a lot of debt. It's a lot of debt, even with a good job, and a lot of these people have no jobs. So this whole entire university system, which again, I didn't go to college. I regret it. Well, no, I don't regret it per se, but like it's something I look back on and I would say it's a regret. I would have been a different person. I wouldn't have been a comedian. I wouldn't have done this. I would have went to college and my life would have been different because that's the way lives work. By the way, if you do one thing, you go this way. If you do another thing, you go that way. Most people will tell you that's not you. No, you always get where you're going. No, you don't. No, you don't. Actually, you don't. There's paths, you choose one. I chose one that didn't involve college. The loser I would have been had I gone to college, I can't even imagine it. That being said, I do hear the stories from college, and I visited people at college. I do kind of regret not being part of it. It's a part of Americana that I can't really comment on with the authority that I comment on other things. You know what I mean? Like being an influential multimillionaire, something like that, you know, like things that I kind of know. But I will say about college that people have a good time and they leave and they get a job and they're supposed to then be good. That's the promise of college. You do your 4 years and then you're good. Not great, maybe not great, but good. Now these people graduate college and there is nothing for them to do. There is nothing for them to do except go to New York City, go to the Mamdani rally and throw on the burqa. And I don't think that's a great testament for how well this college system is working out for anyone. I mean, the best case, what are people that graduate college even do now, a lot of them? I don't even know what they do. What are your friends doing that graduated college? What are they doing?
Working at a coffee shop.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. Isn't that amazing? We don't have enough wars anymore. Sure, if we could ship them all to the Ukraine and kill them, that's one thing. But they're here, they're around us, and they're angry. And this is part of the problem, and we're bringing in more people. We're bringing in more people to do the jobs that you would think college-educated people could do. We're still telling people the biggest lie in the world: do what you love what you do. What makes you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? What are you doing? You gotta do what you love. What are you interested in? Somebody messaged me the other day. They're like, I don't know if I should do like more tech stuff or history. I've got a passion for history. And I go, you should take your life. You should go to a national park and sacrifice yourself to the AI demon that Peter Thiel is creating. Why waste your time and my time with these questions? But this is what I mean. So we have the president of the United States going, we need Chinese and Indian people so that our college system doesn't collapse. Our college system, which is one of the single biggest reasons people are in debt. Because 30 or 40 years ago, we said, by the way, don't be a plumber and don't own a plumbing company because then your ass crack's gonna show. Don't be an exterminator. Don't be a union guy. Don't be a tradesman, even though women like to fuck those people, by the way. So do men, so does everyone. But don't be one of those people. Be a weird dilettante. Be somebody who hovers around the arts, work in some creative adjacent media field that's meaningless horseshit garbage. Go sit in a room at Vice while they do documentaries about like what happened to the fucking animals that survived the fucking 3 Mile Island or whatever fucking Chernobyl. They're doing documentaries in old Chernobyl theme parks at Vice, and apparently all of the people that lived in that world, consultants and executives and all this bullshit that all these people wanted to be. They wanted to sit somewhere in an air-conditioned room and pop off and have an opinion. All of these people are loaded with student loan debt, and they're in deep trouble. They're in deep trouble. And the good news is now we're bringing in the Chinese to deal with them. That's the final step, by the way. The final step for these people, okay? The final indignity The final, it's like the scene in the movie when the hand doesn't, like there's two hands gripping the edge of the building and one goes. The final hand that only has 3 fingers clawing for life, the final indignity will be the Chinese coming in and stepping on your fingers and you're out. And the president of the United States telling you it's necessary to keep our college system going. We need more Chinese people in the colleges. Because you people are doing so well, you need a little competition. We need a little competition. It's bringing the Chinese. We're going to bring in the Chinese. And Laura Ingraham rightly goes, well, wait a minute. Does this seem like it's a good idea? They spy on us. They're our enemy. They're this, they're that. And you go, yeah, but, I don't like the French. And it's not great. Well, this is all depressing. And I don't want to depress everybody because there is good news on the horizon. Our friend of the show, Barry Weiss, head of CBS News, wants to get rid of standards and practices for having too much power. Here's the thing you got to admire about Barry Weiss, and this is what I like about Barry Weiss. This is what I've always liked about Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss does not have time to pretend she's not doing exactly what she's doing. She doesn't have time to pretend. It's the great Bill Hicks joke where he goes, my boss says to me, Hicks, what are you doing? And he goes, there's nothing to do. And he goes, the boss goes, well, pretend you're working. And Bill Hicks goes, well, why don't you pretend I'm working? You get paid more, you fantasize. Barry Weiss is basically telling people, why don't you pretend I'm not here to destroy this whole thing? Because that's what I'm here to do. I'm not going to pretend that. I'm not pretending that. I don't have the time to pretend that I have not been sent on a mission to destroy this legacy broadcasting institution. I'm here to destroy it. I'm here to make it a vessel of state propaganda. Which state? Well, we know which state. It's not America. It's to be a vessel of state propaganda. It's all it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be anything else. And Barry Weiss, to her credit, is not pretending she's there to do anything else. She's going, why are there standards and practices? Why are they showing the Palestinian reach for the cookie when we blow their head off? Why are they doing that? Why are they asking these questions? Why are they saying this? Because Barry knows what she's there to do. You don't get to her level of success. She's a very successful person who I like. I find charming, very sweet, nice lady. But she's gotten to where she's gotten in life because she doesn't have the time to entertain a fantasy that she's doing anything else. She's very clear about what she's doing. Now, you can debate it. You can have your ideas. You can be befuddled or confused about why it's happening. And that's all your business. She's very, very much 100% on board. My job is to get rid of any independent voice at CBS. We're here to destroy the network and get rid of anybody that would stand in our way. We are here to deliver state propaganda. That's all. That's what they're there to do. And not the United States, not the United States propaganda, by the way. She is there to deliver Israeli propaganda. She knows it. We know it. Larry Ellison hired her to do it. That's okay. They've already got a blacklist of actors who will never work at Paramount. It doesn't matter. No one cares. Nobody watches any of this crap. Anyway, it's over. The robots are coming. The demon's coming. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Everybody wants to pretend like we're still living in a place that makes some sense, but it doesn't make any to anyone. It makes no sense to anyone, which is why movies don't make any sense anymore, because movies used to reflect a reality that you somehow understood. But the reality is so fractured that nobody can even understand what's happening. So Barry Weiss is, let's read a little bit of this article. There are growing concerns within CBS News that Barry Weiss could gut or even disband the network standards and practices team, with multiple sources telling The Independent that the new editor-in-chief has complained that the unit has too much power and she doesn't see the point of keeping it around. The internal rumblings within the CBS newsroom come as the head of standards and practices announced her resignation, and the network disbanded its vaunted race and culture unit the race and culture unit is probably nonsense. And Barry's not wrong about some of this garbage. Some of this woke horse shit that they shoehorned into these companies, this DEI crap does have to go. 100%. 100%, the race unit, okay? But I also think that, does anyone think Larry Ellison bought CBS because he was concerned about blacks? I'm asking. Does anyone think that the Ellison family bought CBS because they were concerned about El Salvadorians not working in media? You think he's sitting down there on Palm Beach and going, I'm concerned that there's not enough Guatemalans in media? I don't think so. I don't think so. Or was he going, was he saying like, I wanna buy CBS News because I wanna make sure that people get hired based on merit. I don't want somebody that has a job at CBS thinking they just got it because of their color of their skin. That's so demoralizing. I don't want that. I hate imposter syndrome. It's my least favorite thing. So I'm going to spend billions of dollars. I'm going to buy it. We're going to install Barry Weiss to get rid of all the DEI stuff. And as a tiny corollary that has nothing to do with anything, we might look at the Israel coverage. While we're there, we might look at the Israel coverage. It's not the focal point. But while we're there, we might just look at the Israel coverage. We might look at it. Everybody's talking to me right now about how do I scale my e-commerce business? I say, Tim was I kind of respect her. Is her last name Reeves? Elle Reeves? Elle Reeves, I kind of respect her because she always, it's like the scene in, here's the thing with Elle Reeves, it's the scene in It. Get Elle Reeves up so everybody knows. She just did an interview with Candace Owens, having done an interview months and months ago with me. Elle Reeves, who I respect, before you do an interview with Elle Reeves, what happens is, it's the scene from It, where the rowboat, the paper that's made into a rowboat is sailing down the street in the water, and then it gets to that grating, and instead of a clown grabbing it, it's Elle Reeves. And she goes, I want to ask you a question. And you go, what? And she goes, that's a fun little boat. I like little boats. And you go, yeah. And she goes, does it bother you that most boats are owned by white men? And you're like, what? Elle, what are we doing? I want to ask you a question. I'm Elle Reeves. It's Elle Reeves. But another version of Elle Reeves was asking a question to Sydney Sweeney. And the question was, you did a jeans advertisement where you said Sydney Sweeney has good jeans. And people got angry about it. And Sydney Sweeney's angry. I don't even think Sydney Sweeney's that MAGA, by the way. I don't, maybe she is. I don't think she is. I think she just has a Republican family. She's probably like a normal human being that isn't a psychopath. She's an attractive woman. She's an actress. She has money. She just isn't nuts. And that doesn't mean I'll agree with her on anything or get along with her. I've never met her and I don't know anything about her. I don't care what her opinions are, truly. But she doesn't strike me as some ideologically driven person. She's probably just like, hey man, I got a gig. I got a job. I did a jeans ad. They came up with this thing. But anyway, take a look at this thing. People are mad at Sydney Sweeney for not distancing herself more from this jeans ad.
The criticism of the content, which was basically that maybe specifically in this political climate, like white people shouldn't joke about genetic superiority. Like that was kind of like the criticism, broadly speaking. And since you are talking about this, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that specifically.
I think that when I have an issue that I want to speak about, people will hear.
Right. Now, this is a good answer because, by the way, what she was basically saying is, listen, you've created this issue, so I'm not going to speak on it. What people realize when they're in the media is that somebody like Sydney Sweeney apologizing for this ad becomes the biggest entertainment news of the week. Even though this was somewhat big news, if she apologizes, they dig in. And they dig in because none of these people actually want an apology. They want to destroy your life, your career. So Sydney Sweeney goes, hey, if I have something I want to talk about, I'll talk about it. And people got a little mad at it and they said it was tone deaf or whatever, but what they want to do is draw her into this larger conversation about ethics and, you know, the responsibility you have a platform, and they want to do all this crap. And Sydney Sweeney just goes, listen, I'm a hot chick who's an actress. That's what I do. I got big tits. I'm an actress. I'm a good actress. That's what I am. That's what she is. She's not Condoleezza Rice. She's an actress. There's nothing wrong with it. Maybe she's smart. Maybe Jacob Elordi's a genius. I don't know. Maybe they're all geniuses over there. Maybe Zendaya's a genius. Maybe they're all geniuses on the cast of Euphoria, the set. Where if you sat on set with them for 5 minutes, you go, oh my God, they're discussing the role of nation states after the Cold War. I don't know what they're doing because they say that Sydney Sweeney and Zendaya are in bitter feud over this, but whatever, who cares? I don't even care, it doesn't matter. The point is that now here's the only thing that Sydney Sweeney could have said better. I want you to play her question, and I'm going to say what Sydney Sweeney should have said. Play the question again. I'm going to tell you what Sydney Sweeney should have said. Go.
Content, which was basically that maybe specifically in this political climate, like white people shouldn't joke about genetic superiority. Like that was kind of like the criticism, broadly speaking. And since you are talking about this, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that specifically.
Heil Hitler. That's the answer that she could have said. If Sydney Sweeney just looked at her and went, Heil Hitler. Because here's the thing, that right then and there puts the interviewer on her back immediately. If you're Sydney Sweeney and you just say, Heil Hitler, and with the dead-eyed stare that Sweeney has, she just sits there with her big tits and her leather coat, and she looks right at the interviewer's face and goes, Heil Hitler. That's what I have to say. What do you have to say about it? That, to me, makes this is a lost moment for Sydney Sweeney, in my mind. In my mind, this is a missed opportunity for Sydney Sweeney. She missed an opportunity to do something really fun, which was to just stare at the interviewer and say, Heil Hitler. That, to me, is a missed opportunity. Hopefully, going forward, if Sydney Sweeney is asked a question like this again, okay, and she has this opportunity to come in with something simple and clear. Simple and clear, where she could just look at the interviewer and go, Heil Hitler. And then she'll be asked about that. The next interviewer will go, you were asked about a controversial jeans ad in an interview recently, and your response was Heil Hitler. And then Sydney Sweeney's response should even get quicker, where it's not even a verb. She just starts going like this. She just starts doing that, doing the Hitler salute instead of the words. So this is a fun thing to do, because then they could really have nowhere to go. If Sydney Sweeney just said, I'm a Nazi, full stop. What? I did a jeans ad, I'm a Nazi. I'm a Nazi, I did a jeans ad. All of a sudden now there's no more questions to ask. It's actually interesting if she comes out and says Heil Hitler, it actually stops the issue dead in its tracks. It ends the conversation once and for all. She goes, yeah, I'm a Nazi. She goes, I'm actually not a Republican. I'm not a member of MAGA. I am a Nazi. I'm a member of the Nazi party. And then they go, interesting. right then and there. And then they'll bring Zendaya in and they'll go, now what's going on with you? And Zendaya will go, I don't want to be on set with her. She's a Nazi. She's a fucking Nazi. But then even, it's a great opportunity for her and Zendaya to can patch it up, because then Zendaya can go, you know what? I judged her for being a Nazi, but then I started hanging out with her. And I was kind of like, you know what? She's fun. She's actually a really fun Nazi. And I'm sorry that I had, I got to set and I had all this baggage with me and this idea of what Nazis were. And then me and her were at the red carpet one day and I didn't have gum. And she walked up to me and said, are you looking for gum? And I was like, I kind of am. And she gave me some of her gum. And then she looked at me and she said, well, now you're chewing Nazi gum. And I smiled and I realized that it's all so silly. And Di goes, it's all so silly. She goes, we're actors and actresses. We don't know what we are. We're Nazis, we're communists. It doesn't matter. We're not even real. I don't even exist. Sam Altman gave birth to a demon. And that's running the whole show now. I'm not even real. That jeans ad's not even real. No one can even fit in jeans. The American public can't wear jeans anymore. They wear big diapers and they live in their own shit. That's really what it comes down to. Nobody's wearing jeans anymore. People wear diapers and they live in their own shit. And they try to find undigested food and they eat it. And they roll around on the hot face of the earth while it's baked by the sun, waiting for Peter Thiel to summon the AI demon that Trump is bringing the Chinese students in to make. I don't get the problem here. So what? In that estimation, whether Sydney Sweeney is or isn't a Nazi doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to matter. I don't think it's a huge deal. It's not a big fucking deal. African TikTok star snatched and executed by jihadists on live stream while her family watched. Here's the thing with TikTok, and I'll say it again. I'll say this thing about TikTok. I've never gotten big on TikTok. People share some of my content, but this is TikTok is rough. It is tough out there. And this star, who was from the country of what country? Mali? What country is she from? Let's find out.
Timbuktu, I think.
Is it Timbuktu? It's the Timbuktu region. It's the city of Tanka. We used to joke around, and Timbuktu meant just a faraway place. So my grandfather would be like, well, I got to pick you up from Timbuktu? Like, it's a funny thing. But I always thought like Timbuktu would actually be nice and calm, but apparently it's not. Mariam Cisse was shot dead in the streets by suspected members of the notorious Jama at-Nasra al-Islam wal Muslimin on November 7th. I don't want to watch her death, obviously, but is there on TikTok, do we have any of this or probably not, right?
I think it got removed.
They removed it. And you know what would piss her off? It's probably her most viewed thing. There's no way it's not her most viewed thing. Well, she was a loyalist to the army, and this jihadist group was angry at the army, and she was a popular TikToker, and they just snatched her. They snatched her up. Let's see this. They snatched her up, and they then executed her in the middle of the street on TikTok. Why wouldn't we want more of this in the country? I'm asking. What could go wrong? 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco-free. Lucy breakers and nicotine pouches. Bring this story up. These two kids from New Jersey, there was some terror plot. One of them's actually good-looking, and they were from New Jersey, and they're two young Muslim children, and not children, they're adults. And Tomas Khan, Jimenez Guzel, and Milo Sederat were recently arrested in connection with an alleged ISIS-inspired terror plot in Michigan. The suspects were part of a larger multi-agency investigation that led to arrests across the countries. Now, by the way, sometimes a lot of this is the FBI stoking this or who knows what this is. I'm not commenting on the actual. I'm just saying reportedly this has happened. These are kids from Montclair, New Jersey, which is not like an economically disadvantaged area. These are wealthy kids that are being radicalized on the internet, and they're planning to attack a gay club or something. And there are 2 Montclair teens arrested for alleged terror plots. So here's the reality. I mean, I don't understand the problem with bringing more people in, because here's the deal. Maybe, sure, their kids in rare instances might get radicalized to commit acts of terror, but at least they're also taking your jobs. So, I mean, it's a win-win. It's a win-win-win-win-win. Because you could be a good person. It's very easy to be a good person. You just had to give up your right to speech, to own a house, and to have a job. And to maybe not get attacked if you go out. And then you'll be a good person. It's the easiest way to be a good person now. You just got to give up any standard of living you might have had or wanted and invite people into your own country to come and maybe kill you. But here's the upside. You be a good person. You're a good person. No one will call you a name. No one will call you a name. In fact, at your funeral, they will say great things about you. They will say phenomenal things about you at your funeral once you have been killed. 2 Montclair teens arrested for alleged terror plot plan to become ISIS fighters. Let's go down here. The NYPD's Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau, which, by the way, Mamdani, I think is getting rid of, quietly led the investigation and arrested 2 teenagers from New Jersey with the help of the FBI. Blobbity, blobbity, blobbity. They were 2 kids. They were 19, former college athletes. They were charged with participating in an ISIS-inspired terror ring. We've started to see a steady increase in would-be foreign fighters going to 2 places, Syria and Africa. Huh. Interesting. Prosecutor said he texted, I'm actually going to go strap a bomb to my chest and go blow up the blank company headquarters. Another text said, line up 500 Jews and execute them in front of their wives and family. Another text said, support for an incredibly lethal and incredibly enduring foreign terrorist organization that has wreaked a lot of bloodshed around the world, but importantly in the United States. They're talking about, I guess, ISIS or cells or whatever. Interesting. Police said the 2 teens were connected to the same network of people in the terrorist plot in Detroit over Halloween weekend. So listen, here's the deal. I've not looked at the evidence here, so I will tell you this. I don't necessarily always trust the FBI in these matters, for sure. But I do look at the UK, and I do look at a lot of other countries in Europe, and coinciding with a massive increase in immigration, they have had more terrorist attacks and more violent crime, okay? So there might be a correlation there. Again, you know, the fact that Turkish drug dealers are bombing car bombs in Sweden. But again, if you're Swedish and don't want that, you're a Nazi. You're a literal Nazi if you don't want a Turkish drug dealer to blow up another drug dealer's car. If you ask why Sweden became the rape capital of Europe, you're a Nazi. You're just a Nazi if you ask any of these questions, by the way. If you ask why 300 or 400 Chinese students should come in to do all the jobs that we have in the country when they're committing espionage and spying on us, and they're supposedly our greatest threat, again, you're a Nazi. So 3 men were arrested there. This is Detroit after prosecutors claimed they had accumulated an arsenal of weapons and ammunition to carry out attack. And again, I'm not saying anything good about the FBI. What I'm saying is that if you look around the world and you look at the UK and you look at all these places, there's an increase in terrorist attacks, and a lot of them are committed not by Anglicans in London. This is not a ton of like Episcopalian terrorism in London or France or the Netherlands. There's not a massive amount of Presbyterian terrorism happening that I'm seeing. I could be completely wrong. He was arrested at Newark Airport, and that's tough to get arrested at because there's always delays. Can you imagine your flight's delayed for 2 hours and then you get arrested for being a terrorist? That's terrible. Waymo driverless car in San Fran runs over and kills beloved neighborhood cat, Kit Kat, sparking community outrage. Waymos are going to start not only killing cats, but eventually people are going to die in a Waymo. People are going to die in a Waymo, and this is what it is. Let's watch this a little bit. This is sad. Obviously, Kit Kat, R.I.P. the cat, killed by a Waymo. Killed by a Waymo, Kit Kat.
I would be hoping that this whole Kit Kat thing just dies, and that's not happening. Tomorrow we'll be holding a press conference at Ronder's Market, Tuesday, November 4th at noon.
Justice for Kit Kat.
My name is Jackie Fielder. I represent the Mission on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. The Mission is where our beloved Kit Kat called home. I live around the corner from Ronder's Market, where
here's what's interesting about this. San Francisco for the last decade has had people on fentanyl shitting and fucking in the street. Nobody has cared about that. People have been overdosing on the street in San Francisco literally for about a decade. People walk over dead bodies to get into Whole Foods. None of that has bothered anyone. One Waymo kills a cat, and now they're ready to go. This is amazing. A Waymo killed this cat, and all of these people she goes, we're having a press conference about this. Literally 2 blocks away from where the, sad cat killing was, there are people bleeding out on the street dying. I mean, this is crazy. I'm talking about Requiem for a Dream, final scene, double penetration, ass to ass fucking to get more fent 3 blocks away from where this cat was killed, and no one blinks an eye. No one bats an eye at that, by the way, over there. But if a cat gets killed by a driverless car, then all of a sudden the tech people have too much power. Then people start asking questions. Not the surveillance technology, not Peter Thiel doing doing a musical about Satan. None of that. That doesn't get them going. It's a cat getting squashed by a Waymo. Let's watch a little bit of this.
By a Waymo. Last week, I posted about how the Waymo CEO said that society will accept a murder by a Waymo. And since the fatal hit and run of Kit Kat, Waymo has confirmed that one of its self-driving cars indeed killed Kit Kat. And Waymo tried to say that the cat jumped in front of the car when actually deeper reporting by Mission Local uncovered from witnesses that Kit Kat was actually sitting in front of the Waymo.
How funny it would be if as she's walking, a homeless guy just jumps and eats her. Like he just bites her neck and she goes down. 2 people who asked to remain anonymous said they left the bar Dalva on Monday night and saw Kit Kat sitting in front of the Waymo for about 7 seconds. The cat then walked under the Waymo and proceeded to head towards the sidewalk as the car pulled away. All right, so this is interesting. The Waymo is actually being accused of acting in a murder, like actually murdering the cat. All right, let's keep going.
Before the Waymo ran over Kit Kat's lower half of her body. And the poor thing crawled 10 feet back to the sidewalk and suffered a horrible, horrible long unaliving. AVs collect endless amounts of data on us and erode ridership from struggling transportation, public transportation, contribute to traffic congestion, and also drive harmful mining practices in the global south.
Yeah, get her out of here. Get her out of here. I can't deal with this harmful mining practice. These people want, white guilt will kill us all. It will kill us all, by the way. This will kill everyone. The idea that this woman gives a shit about a cat but doesn't comment on the overall nightmare that her city has become, this will kill us all. It's a white woman who will make excuses for why someone is shooting up in front of your kids. Always, without fail, it'll be a white woman who looks like her who will make excuses for why someone is shooting fentanyl in a Panera. Because there's a certain sickness where certain white people like to get off on explaining to their kids that other people are on drugs. And they kind of like it. They like, I know a sick fuck who lives in Venice and he goes, my son has a window right by the alley and he sees the homeless people and it's cool. It's a good experience for him to have. And I go, no, it's not. You're sick. It's actually not a good experience. But they like that. There's a certain breed of white scum that believes that homeless people are fun, teachable moments for their children. That having junkies around is fun. because they get to teach compassion to their children. Now, they won't call their brother or sister they haven't talked to in 10 years, but they get to teach compassion to their children by saying, oh, that's someone who has issues. They're sick. They have a problem. This is a pathology. I'd never encountered it until I was in LA, or actually in San Francisco to the West Coast, Portland and Seattle, where people actually fetishize sick people dying on the street. And they like it. There's something about them, they like it. They like explaining it to their children, and that it shows that they're somehow good people because they urge compassion. Not everyone has a house like we do. Not everyone's lucky enough to have a house like this. So what they need is a steady stream of junk. And then there's the sick people who just light them on fire. There's a lot of like finance or tech people that probably late at night will grab these homeless people and just kill them, light them on fire, or rape them or murder them, truly, to get off. That's probably happening too, as a guess. But I think the larger problem is that you have like the white guilt brigade that's out there going, well, and isn't like, I hear about this, that the kids, they have their favorite homeless person. This is how sick it is. I'm telling you right now, I've heard this in Los Angeles. People go, well, it's our unhoused neighbor and my son loves him and he always brings a little treat for my son. He always brings like a little toy for my son. And I go, how sick are you people? You know, when the Echo Park homeless encampment got busted up in LA, a homeless encampment where a woman died, OD'd on fentanyl. You know who really hated it? The community of sick people that fetishize dying homeless people. And they walked their kids around that little homeless encampment where they showed their children dying homeless people because they treated those fentanyl addicts like people in a zoo. They're disgusting and sick, and they should be sent to the Ukraine and killed. Anyway, I'm on the road, so see me if you'd like. Lots of fun dates coming up, lots of shows. We'll see you in Fort Lauderdale this weekend. It's sold out, all except for one. Chicago's sold out. We've added a show. We will see you in Fort Lauderdale, in Schaumburg, Illinois, in San Jose, California, Salt Lake City, Utah. We'll see you in Brea, California. We'll see you in Denver, Colorado. We'll see you in Houston, Texas.
And misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists, misogynists.
The things that are on my mind is first of all this the collapse of the cathedral narrative. Normie narratives, whether it's in politics, American politics, or religion in the West, the cathedral, as it's often been called, by a host of writers like Royce back in the day, writers in the Dark Enlightenment sphere. I actually like that terminology because it's a great picture for a big cult that's erected a worldview on a lot of lies. Lies like classical liberalism, Americanism, lies like unfeigning support for Zionism, Christian dispensationalism, feminism, egalitarianism, equalitarianism, on and on and on. The cathedral is losing its hold, its narrative. That includes even the World War II consensus and all of that. Now, this is kind of a good thing for sure. This is great. However, the danger is that people step in. Yeah, I'm not supporting the Dark Enlightenment. I'm just saying that the idea of a cathedral is a funny and appropriate image for the modern, postmodern, liberal, post-liberal cult that everybody is subjected to, that we live under. Now, pretty much all the things that the cathedral is built on are false. But it takes a while for people to see that. A lot of people in the alternative media, people like myself, and not just me, obviously plenty others, we talked about stuff 10, 15, even 20 years ago. And now you're seeing very mainstream, very popular figures, even bigger than Alex and others, begin to discuss on a large scale these topics. Tucker just has on a guy talking about geoengineering. Now, I wrote about geoengineering in my second book. The articles were written 10 years ago, but it made it into the publication in 2018. So almost 7-8 years in print in Esoteric Hollywood too. And I first learned about whatever is going on through geoengineering in 2007. And I got a lot of people making fun of me, saying very mean, hurtful things. And did I give up? Did I quit? Was I butthurt? No. I continued on trucking. Got my chips cashed in. Keep trucking like the boomer man. I don't even know how that stupid ass song goes. That's the only part I know of it. I'm sure there's more to it, but...
And it's interesting because...
This does not mean that all of the voices out there are going to be saying everything right, or they're going to be getting everything 100%. 100%! To quote Sam Tripoli. They're going to be getting things wrong. They're going to be, people are going to go through the phase of the alien nonsense. They're going to go through the phase of let's rebuild Atlantis, and we're going to discover the ancient hidden cities of Atlantis, and all this kind of stuff. Tammy's in here laughing. Thank you.
Talk about Francis Bacon.
Francis cooking bacon in there. Francis bringing home the bacon with the new Atlantis. Atlantis is Atlanta. Y'all ain't heard that? Anyway, so the cathedral's narratives are collapsing. And that includes everything from Cold War, because we just saw everybody in a ruckus and an uproar over Trump bringing this former Al-Qaeda al-Nusra Jilani to the White House. This is a repeat of the Mujahideen in the 80s. Trump is very much a Reagan type of figure, and that includes all the bad parts of Reagan as well. So we'll talk about some of that. We'll talk about Jeff Stein McCaffrey a little bit too. But first, let's play this clip of Tucker unloading on
Ben Shapiro, Facts and Logic, Babylonian Talmud.
It's fine. But Ben Shapiro spent, a decade posing as someone who actually cared about your concerns as an American. He did it imperfectly. There were flashes that he didn't really care.
Now, remember, he was at all costs never Trumper. Not that I even care about that per se, but it shows a flip-flop, right? Even if you don't like Trump, Ben Shapiro goes from never Trumper to supposedly
MAGA. Supposedly MAGA. MAGA. Donald Trump is not MAGA. Donald Trump's not MAGA.
And then they cajole and co-opt Jordan Peterson onto their plantation. This idea that I don't talk about this stuff, that I'm a coward or whatever, it's just not even based in reality. Remember WorldNet Daily? Like, imagine not reading the room and wanting to sign on with something like that, right? That's basically where we see Matt Fradd and people like that.
I really care about this country, and I'm against the trans movement or whatever. But increasingly, as everyone's gotten more hysterical and prone to sort of blurting out the truth, that veil has dropped, and you can see what Ben Shapiro really, really cares about. So this is a very revealing exchange that took place 6 days ago, last Thursday, on stage with Megyn Kelly. Ben Shapiro was just sitting there being interviewed by Megyn Kelly, and he said something like, well, Tucker Carlson's, for Maduro, the communist leader of Venezuela, who I guess were on the way to killing or something, forcing out, regime changing him. And he defended Maduro. Didn't, actually. And Megyn Kelly says, well, Tucker said in his show that Maduro, most people didn't know this, whatever his many faults, I wouldn't hire him as an economist, okay? But whatever his many faults, has the most socially conservative country probably in the hemisphere. So Venezuela is just a fact. I mean, I didn't make this up. I'm not in charge of Venezuela. Just notice
El Salvador
that Venezuela has banned pornography, banned abortion, banned gay marriage, banned sex changes, and banned usury. You don't have credit cards with 40% interest in Venezuela. Okay. Ben Shapiro responded this way.
Tucker's made the point, I'm not here to be Tucker's defender, but he's made the point that Maduro is culturally conservative.
Who gives a shit? The guy's a communist dictator. Everyone in his country is eating dog. He's shipping fentanyl to the United States to kill Americans. Why do I give a shit whether he's anti-LGBTQ rights?
Who gives a shit? I do. I'm not moving to Venezuela. I'm not pro Maduro.
Now, this is very relevant because this goes back to the bullcrap of the Cold War era narratives, right? And the propaganda that we always incessantly hear about Yuri Bezmenov and how Yuri Bezmenov was the hero because he explained how the KGB subverted America, blah, 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 blah. The problem is that if you go and read what else he believed in, you wouldn't have all the Skittles stuff in the Eastern Bloc countries if it was not for all the stuff that Yuri Bezmenov was pushing. And that was the CIA line at the time. All the Skittles, the poor Skittles, are being persecuted in these Eastern Bloc countries. And that's why forever and ever and ever we've called this out. And Mark Hackard wrote this great essay back, 5 years ago. Who was Yuri Bezmenov? Well, when he defected, he immediately did these interviews back in the 1980s with G. Edward Griffin. And I'm not dissing G. Edward Griffin. I'm sure that he was a nice man. I don't know if he just recently passed away, if he's still alive, but I think he's getting pretty elderly. And I think G. Edward Griffin sincerely was opposed to communism and all that, but he immediately sort of platforms and just puts out the propaganda that Yuri Bezmenov's new masters want out, which is the CIA propaganda towards the close of the Cold War. And if you watch the full lectures, and I don't think most people do, most people have just seen the clip of Yuri Bezmenov talking about how KGB operatives subvert the government, right? But if you actually go read and watch the full interview and the full multi-hour talks and interviews with Yuri Bezmenov, he later on gets into how we've got to save the poor Skittles people in Eastern Bloc countries because they're being persecuted. And they need gay rights. They need gay marriage. That was the line of the CIA in the Cold War. We're going to fight the Soviets, not with conservatism, not with right-wing principles. This is the biggest mistake and flaw and failure that so many boomers and evangelitard right-wingers fell into, was thinking, oh yeah, we'll beat the Soviets with liberalism because liberalism is actually conservatism. Well, I'm an evangelical. We're going to bring down that wall, but we're going to have butt and church at the same time out there in the Eastern Bloc countries because the CIA is good right-wing people. This is so stupid. So when something like Maduro comes up, everybody's immediately being pushed back into the classic boomer era Cold War bullshit of, well, he's a socialist, so he ain't good for the GDP. And there's there's flotillas and there's drug boats. Okay, but the things that Ben Shapiro says he doesn't care about are the very things that ultimately bring down civilizations. You can't build a civilization on more GDP. This is the classical liberal narrative. That's why they always want to corral, just like they want black people on the Democratic Party plantation. They want to corral white conservatives, Bible Belt goobers back into the classical liberal versus communist socialist dialectic. And how long have we been sitting here saying this is a failed venture? It's dumb. There's no future for the country if everybody is, classically liberal. It's a dead end. And that narrative, post-Cold War CIA narrative, is collapsing. So what's being replaced? What's next? Well, that is the current fight in the system today. So we have the evangelical dispensational Zio goobers that are all going absolutely insane ape shit on Twitter. I mean, it's just like if you go to your For You, if you're at all critical of this stuff, all it is now even Mike Winger, like goofball, just absolute goober evangelicals, who, by the way, will not debate. I've asked him multiple times to set up formal debate. No way. Absolutely not. Even he's out here sounding off with the rest of the evangelical. These people are just such morons, man. They're so stupid. There's nobody dumber than an evangelical, especially an evangelical boomer, man. And they are the ones propping up these infinitards that just never stop. They never go away. However, their megachurch cathedral foundations are cracking and crumbling. We are now finally beginning to see some crumbling of this just absolute nonsense. Total nonsense. Mike Winger says, Tucker and Candace are heading for a cliff. No, that's old. Oh, they're so bad. But these people, Matt Fradd, they can't read the room. It's your narrative that's collapsing, you goofus. And nobody is going to keep... You understand? There's no more actual Protestant apologists left. Who's the standout Protestant apologist that's actually out there getting converts and winning people and doing debates? There aren't any. Who? Well, maybe Mike Winger could have stepped up. Nope, he won't debate. Wes Huff, he won't debate anybody. Now Ruslan wants to step into that. Well, guess what? Ruslan's a nice guy, but he sucks at debate. And if he tries to debate Candace or Nick or any of these people, he's going to get demolished. I mean, you saw our informal debate over something that he just threw a curveball at me out of nowhere, and it was terrible. Ruslan doesn't even know the basic fallacies. He's not going to handle any competent debater on a real big stage. So the whole evangelical Zio base is a bunch of just absolutely stupid people who will fall for anything. These are the grandmas that give money to the TBN preachers, right? Like, who would actually give money to these people? Well, that's the base. That's who we're talking about here. So there's a fight between them. There's a fight between the emerging dissident right that is now having public voices, that's driving all of the Mark Levins and Ben Shapiro's insane. And so there's a massive schism coming.
I would personally become poorer to end abortion, voluntarily become poorer to end abortion in the United States. That's not a choice. Don't want to become poor, but I would, because I care about it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're offended that I do, but I care about it. Lots of people care about it. I don't think pornography is good. That really hurts people. You know, I don't think pretending that the sexes are the same is good. And you claimed that you didn't think it was good, but it turns out, quote, I don't give a shit. Maduro's against Israel. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the only issue that matters to these people, right? Obviously, dual citizen operatives are not going to be America first. Duh. Like, who's just now figuring this out? And isn't it interesting that we know there is a paid marketing scheme, and we know these people are retweeting all this gibberish, like literally 24/7. I mean, James Lindsay's feed is nothing but this stuff 24/7. So I don't know what happened. Like, he must be racking it up or something. Allegedly.
Give a shit. Well, you spent like a decade pretending you did give a shit, that you were on the side of like normal Americans who have a mix of concerns. They definitely care about economics and they care about social issues too, because they have children and they see where this is going. It's not good. That your economic condition is not the only measure of health. Your spiritual condition matters too. It's just a fact. It does. If you're totally degraded, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's not worth it. It's not worth getting the whole world and losing your soul. Sorry. And most people feel the way, but not Ben Shapiro. He doesn't give a shit. So why the hostility? Well, maybe because if you keep talking about the so-called social issues, which are not limited to abortion and pornography and gay marriage, the trans issue, they get pretty quickly to economics, to usury, to lending money and interest.
Yes. In other words, everything that I've been arguing for the last 10, 15 years about the collapse of classical liberalism and the classical liberal cathedral, its foundations are now shaking. Samson is pushing the pillars apart.
And most people, including me, are not against lending money and interest, conceptually. but it depends on what interest rate it's being loaned at. So there are payday loans in this country that are 600% annually.
Now remember, in the history of Christendom, for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, it was seen as immoral and forbidden for Christians to practice usury. And it is none other than the papacy that changed this position for the West and began to allow it. And if you doubt me on that, your own Catholic writer Michael Hoffman wrote an entire book on it. Usury, the sin that was and now is not. So your own Catholics have noted this. In fact, that's one of the interviews that Michael Lofton himself took down. And we're going to play that glorious Michael Lofton clip again, because this arrogant D-bag who has spent so many years doing nothing but trying to get Orthodox deacons who are solid defrocked, trying to lie about me, everybody, the whole Jay is mean nonsense actually comes from Michael Lofton. With all of his underhanded nonsense, which ironically all the other trads and Roman Catholics found out that that's how just absolutely nasty and disgusting Michael Lofton really is. Now they all agree with me. Well, at the time, I was the bad guy. I was the one that he and Ibarra tried to get deplatformed from interviews. Yes, absolutely. Tried to get me deplatformed from Gospel Simplicity interview. Tried to tell him not to do it. Tried to warn him, all this kind of stuff. So that's what they actually do. They can't actually handle any real debate or discourse. And wait till you see what Eric Ibarra said. Kind of wild what he actually meant. I couldn't believe what Ibarra says. Now, people are saying, oh, Ibarra's going to be Orthodox. Ibarra's been saying this kind of stuff for years. He's been admitting all kinds of things. And then by next week, it'll be like he never said it. That's always been Ibarra's MO.
600% interest annually? And who's taking payday loans in this? Well, poor people are. And they're never getting out of it. They're car loans. They're credit card loans. There's private credit. We used to call it loan sharking. At exorbitant rates so high that people will never get out from under them. They're enslaved by it. It's called debt slavery. It's 100% real. That's not an ideological point. It's just an obvious observation. And it was one of the observations that Charlie Kirk was making on a daily basis before he was assassinated, which is interesting. And it's that kids are buying food on credit. Buy now, pay later. That's credit. You're paying interest on that, whether they call it that or not. Late fees. People are loaning you money at a much higher interest rate than, say, rich people are borrowing money. And that's bad because it's really hard to get out of it. And if you're wondering why, the average...
Right, so let's be clear here. Sincere Hypocrite says, what is the Orthodox position on usury? It's impossible not to have debt in our debt-based economy. It's impossible not to engage with. No, the point is not that you're liable for something that you can't help. Everybody who engages in the fiat system is in some way attached, adjacent to usury. I'm aware of that. The whole system is based on that. That's the whole Federal Reserve system. So if the usury ideology collapses, that means the entire Federal Reserve IRS system collapses. The point is that you, as an Orthodox Christian, don't engage in that because it's not fair to people. It creates the scenarios of slavery that he's talking about.
American American-born home buyer is almost 40 years old. When the year I graduated from college, it was 28. How did that happen? People are in too much debt. This is probably, if it isolated in a world with a lot of issues, a lot of pressing issues, debt for young people is probably the number one issue, which is to say, it's the number one thing that is destroying them and making it impossible for them to get married and have children, which Ben...
And that is a big issue, but it's also, again, the entire Federal Reserve fiat scam system is a problem. And that's why inflation never gets better. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump or somebody else is in there, because there will never be a solution to inflation without fixing the actual monetary system. Even Ron Paul recognized that. Even Barry Goldwater recognized that decades ago. And have you ever noticed that that issue gets brought up every few decades and then it disappears and things just march on? But guess what? It can't march on for forever because all fiat currencies collapse. And I want to mention briefly that smart money doesn't wait until Bitcoin is going to the moon. Smart money puts its
one thing
value in when it's a dip. So this happens every time when Bitcoin dips. People say, "Oh, it's over, it's dead." No, now is the time, you dummies. This is when you buy. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not a registered financial advisor, but I believe that this is the perfect time. Okay, because I start talking about Bitcoin when it goes to a new all-time high, and then people are like, "Oh, it's too high. Oh, it's too high." Okay, well, now it's not too high because it's down from 125 to 94. So if you want to use my promo code right there to get started with Swan Bitcoin, Swan isn't a Bitcoin only company, and you can get started right there with Swan Bitcoin. I want to talk about religious engineering and how there's a stranglehold on people in the West, and actually a lot of places in the world, not just the West, but that stranglehold is there because we have given into being dumbed down. We've given into degeneracy. We've given into being idiots and being weak. That has allowed people to trample on us. Jesus says, if the salt loses its savor, it's worth nothing but to be tossed out and trampled upon. And that's happened to a lot of us in the West, especially because we've lost our way. The historian Oswald Spengler predicted that Western man would create the most amazing technology, and then the third world would come in and take that technology and oppress him and suppress him with it. And that's unfortunately where it looks like things are going. We wrote an episode of the Sam Hyde Show called Dear Elon, and then we wrote Dear Vivek. And those went viral. They got millions and millions of views. One of them got, I think, 25 million impressions or views or whatever on X. And it was really about the H-1B visa controversy, which has resurfaced today. And I'm not going to talk about that mainly because I think this is another major area of criticism of Trump. What he said about this is just totally not true. The idea that humans are really just replaceable economic units, even something that J.D. Vance has admitted is a valid criticism of this sort of classical liberal ethos that we still live in. Classical liberalism has certain weak points. And when you put the market forces at the front of society, it's really a materialist move. To be healthy, to be successful, things like having a religious worldview, a paradigm. So, for example, we have the Dark Enlightenment guys that are kind of gaining some popularity and some traction, and people from the neo-reaction circles for many, many years have also been a fan of what I talk about. And the reason for that is that people like Curtis Yarvin or Nick Land, they realize a lot of the problems in the Western ethos. Now, the Enlightenment gave us a lot of good things, but it also gave us some problems. The idea that you could universalize all of Western man's experience and sort of import that or export that everywhere is not true. You're not going to get all the societies in the world to adopt constitutional government, to adopt voting, and to adopt, these ideas of fair trade, all this kind of stuff. It just doesn't work. Not every society is made even to be the same. And so the universalized ideas, the Enlightenment, all came about prior to things like the discovery of genetics and DNA. Those discoveries had an important role in refuting even some of the Darwinian ideas that you could sort of tailor everything by the environment, right? There's already quite a bit of programming that's in us already by nature. And so nurture isn't the total determiner. There's a balance, a symbiotic relationship between nature and nurture, but two sides of this dialectic were both wrong, and there's a symbiotic synthesis that occurs between these domains. So we lived in this era that the World War II consensus is now beginning to break. People are going crazy and now thinking, oh, well, I guess if World War II wasn't everything that we were taught it was, then I guess now Hitler's a good guy or Hitler's a hero or something like that. So humans swing to the opposite extremes in every case. It's very difficult to get a nuanced, balanced middle position. That's what we have to strive for. So what is it I'm getting at with all this? What am I yapping about? I'm saying that the ethos that we're in, which is becoming postmodern, which is becoming nihilistic, which is becoming destructive, is not accidental. It's something that oftentimes happens in civilizations. Spengler wrote about the fact that eventually societies decay because they have a lifespan. And when they begin to live out that lifespan, they, after that flourishing, begin to have certain patterns that they always display when they start to go bankrupt or when they start to disintegrate. Wellington House and Tavistock actually studied Spengler's writings to weaponize it. Spengler wasn't writing Decline of the West or his other writings to try to tell people how to destroy the West. He felt like it was kind of inevitable as a historian. And then you had people in British intelligence and certain socialists and, you know, the people of the Fabian socialist ilk, John Ruskin, these kinds of characters. Their mindset was that you could create a world federalist socialist society based on the total and technocratic control of man. Back at that time, they thought it would be the British Empire. They thought they could retool and re-engineer the British Empire to be supreme. And even the Rothschilds were part of that. Cecil Rhodes was part of that. And they thought also that they could control Islam, that they could take control of Mecca, they could take control of other holy sites, try to run the Middle East. British Empire, of course, helped create, set the stage for the creation of the nation state of Israel, which we've talked about many times. And they also thought that in order to defeat the Ottomans, one of their rivals, they could make an alliance with radical Muslims or Sunni Islam or Wahhabists. And that is where we get this long-time alliance between the West and even Israel and some forms of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, etc. That continues to this day as we see Giuliani, after the fall of Assad, being welcomed to New York, being lauded and praised. I think I saw him shooting basketball with people the other day. It looks like ISIS is playing basketball with Jewish guys or something on Twitter. It doesn't make any sense, but it actually does make sense because you read Victor Ostrovsky's book, By Way of Deception, and his other book, The Other Side of Deception. In both of those texts, he'll talk about, of course, Mossad, of course, Israel has propped up radical Muslims that would be a destabilizing force in Syria, in Lebanon, in Egypt, and against the PLO. So this is old news, long-time strategy. And for those that would critique Alex or even myself, I mean, Alex talked about and had Victor Ostrovsky on his show 15 years ago. I was listening at the time when he had him on. They were talking about the Israel sinking one of the flotillas at the time. So this is old news. A lot of this is old news, but people are just now learning these things. And then they think that, oh, you never talked about this because I don't hear you talking about it every day. Well, I got my website, my livelihood deleted in 2018 when I was talking about a lot of this stuff. So it's not true, but whatever. What about Islam? Well, we just saw a Muslim socialist become or get elected as the mayor of New York. And this is everything that I've been talking about in all these fourth hours for years now about Fabian socialism, the alliance with Islam. It's the Fabian socialists in the UK that 100 years ago plus said, we will Islamicize England. And then that will be the pattern for the Islamicization of Europe. And although there aren't as many Muslims in the US, that is still part of the strategy. That's why the same Fabian socialists run Canada, Australia, Keir Starmer in the UK. And now we're getting these socialists in New York. There will be socialists in California. And so the walls are closing in. And that is not antithetical to Zionism. Now, in the long term, you could say probably a lot of the socialist-minded people don't care about Israel or don't care about the nation state of Israel. But in the meantime, there's no problem with that alliance. I'm sure that Netanyahu, I'm sure that people in Israel, they don't care about Hamas or Palestinians being deported to America or being deported to Jordan or wherever. I'm sure they don't care. And as many people have noted, there are many rabbis who have called Islam the broom of Judaism or the broom of Israel. And so they don't have a problem with that. In fact, Count Kudnov-Kalergi says that Islam will help destroy Europe, and then we'll have one Mongol race. That's what he wrote in his book, Practical Idealism. It's not racist or mean to talk about what he said would be the plan. And in Carol Quigley's Anglo-American Establishment, he says that Lionel Curtis's plan and Practical Idealism from Kalergi, those plans were both presented to the British establishment. And they agreed that both plans had excellent techniques and strategies for the world order. So religion is a key tool of this system. And Islam is one of the best tools. Judaism, you could say, is a very insular, in-group preference, non-proselytizing religion. So they're not so much interested in going out and converting people. But Islam, which is largely based on copy-paste, mixed-up Bible stories, Gnostic texts, and the Talmud, is a very useful tool. It's not monolithic in the sense that all Muslims believe the same thing, but one of the key books that I read many years ago that I lectured through for a long time is actually from a Royal Society researcher. It's called Secret Affairs, Britain's Collusion with Radical Islam by Mark Curtis. And so when we read a book like this, we're actually reading a very high level kind of, Brzezinski, Kissinger type of text. This is not conspiracy theorizing. When I cite a book, this doesn't mean that I'm agreeing with everything that the author says. It's odd that I have to say this kind of stuff, but people are just so dumbed down and so low IQ when you start talking about a book. I mentioned Carol Quigley. Oh, you think Carol Quigley is telling the truth? You think he's a good guy? Never said that. I'm citing it as a text that tells us what our rulers believe. Just like if I cite Changing Images of Man and we do a whole 4th hour with Alex and it gets, 1 or 2 million views on X, and people start losing their minds and going crazy because I talked about Hitler getting Bank of England funding and getting, industrialist funding. It's like people are just so triggered by these dialectics. But I want to talk about how the elite view these things. What do they write about in their books? We want to understand their perspective. I know that's hard for some people to do, to get out of your little box and think in terms of how other people view things. But Aristotle said it's the mark of an intelligent man to understand an argument without accepting it. And that's what we're trying to do here when we look at these high-level texts and what the elite themselves say. So what does the Royal Society, the RIIA, Royal Institute for International Affairs, say about Islam? Well, this book is written from that perspective. Of course, Britain has colluded with radical Islam as an example for many years. Why would they do that? It doesn't seem to make sense. Why would they support the system or a system that seems to undermine traditional UK, English, quasi-Christian values? Well, he says at the beginning of the book that there's 5 key reasons why Islam was used by the British Empire. During the Cold War, it was a powerful bastion against the Soviets, so they could utilize it, much like Brzezinski talked about the Mujahideen being a kind of anti-red, anti-communist muscle, a conservative, quote, muscle, they called it. So they could also use it for destabilization. So it's anti-communist, it's conservative muscle, and it has a very powerful tool within it because it's almost like a death cult, right? You can really engineer people very well to be suicide bombers, whatever. So it's a destabilizing force, especially the Taliban version or the ISIS versions of it, right? It's a proxy military force. You can utilize this force in some other country to fight for you. And it also carries within it political tools. Why? Why was there so much of this utilizing of Islam? Why would the UK care so much about this? Well, from the vantage point of empire, it's all about controlling oil and resources. So obtaining and controlling oil and resources is exactly why they would do it. And even controlling the religious sites ultimately has to do with that. So again, the book is excellent. It's Secret Affairs. I've lectured through this text as well as many other texts just like it. And if you don't follow me on YouTube, please do so. I mean, we cover everything from movies to big geopolitical texts. We do comedic stuff. Follow me, Jay Dyer, on YouTube and on X. The collapse of Western narratives, the rise of accelerationism, technocracy, transhumanism, the push of Islam into the West, all of these forces that are intended ultimately to collapse and recreate the West into the image of something akin to a dystopian nightmare. We were talking about Islam being pushed in the West on purpose because it's a tool of the elites that would like to see an absolute demographic change in all the West, not just Europe, but also the United States. And they're very open about that. Replacement migration is real. There were bankers, Peter Sutherland, years ago, talking publicly in the European news about how to do this, how to engineer this, how to structure this, echoing the 100 years earlier plan from Count Coudenhove-Kalergi in his book, Practical Idealism, which you can all look up and see is very real. Not a conspiracy theory. It's a model of immigration warfare or weapons of mass migration, to quote the Kelly Greenhill military text. So we're talking about these deals and these decisions that were made by the British Empire to structure a socialist possibility of the future. And there were some debates amongst the elites as to how to go about this and how exactly they wanted to structure it. Some of them favored something more akin to a conservative right-wing approach. Some of them, even amongst the British elites, favored Hitler and Nazism. And some of them actually favored more of a socialist communist style. So you've got factions and disagreements amongst the Council on Foreign Relations back in the Cold War. There were debates and disagreements. Some of them wanted a rapprochement with the Soviet Union. They wanted the third way, where you could synthesize capitalism and communism. Some of them wanted, amongst, I think, the Dulleses, they seemed to even like Hitler and his ideas. So there were people in America that supported fascism, Operation Paperclip, etc. There were people in the U.S. that supported Fabian socialism. You had Colonel Edwin Mandel House and President Wilson basically being socialist. You had, the vice president at that time was also socialist, FDR socialist. So America has had these same phases and experiments with socialism. And even though socialism always collapses, a lot of the Gen Z and younger millennials are convinced that capitalism has failed. And so now they want to experiment with socialism. And being dumbed down, being uneducated, they don't know that socialism is actually a tool of the money elite. They think that they're actually going to get a free lunch. They think that they're going to get a universal basic income. They think that technocracy is actually about fairness and actually about everybody getting a slice of the pie. And it's not. It's about enslavement. Ultimately, it is a satanic anti-human philosophy. If you remember in 1984, that's really the point that Orwell is making in that novel, is that Ingsoc is English Fabian socialism. It's also modeled on Stalinism, the two together, and it's a boot stamping on the face of man for all eternity. In Bill Joy's famous essay that Alex Jones always quotes, "The Future, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us," if you read the full essay, it's all about how the technocrats have already decided that it's a post-human future. That's what we're up against. That's where we're going. And so he says, I've had a crisis of conscience, you could say. I'm looking for some kind of an ethic. We need some kind of future ethic that will promote virtue. And he sort of speculates that maybe Buddhism or something like that. So, and I think he even makes reference to things like tragedy and hope. So it's an odd essay. It references a lot of things that you wouldn't expect, a lot of things that you hear me talk about or Alex talk about for many, many years. But he says that the danger is that the future is anti-human. The future is to replace man with some kind of silicon-based life form or something post-human. And with a lot of the philosophers that we've seen being discussed lately, the Curtis Yarvins, the Nick Lands, their idea is, well, we're going to have a sort of technocratic monarchy, perhaps a Bayes and Trad CEO city-state that supplants the older models of the collapsing Enlightenment narratives. While I agree with the Dark Enlightenment's critique, I don't know that the answer is going to be something like a Nietzschean John Galt CEO that, rules a city-state or something like that. I mean, it just seems very unlikely that you can actually construct a society or a civilization that doesn't have some kind of cohesive narrative or worldview. something that teaches virtue, something that allows families to flourish, something that's pro-human. I mean, even though you might have positive critiques from Yarvin or Nick Land or any of these sort of Nietzschean figures or Nietzschean-minded ideologues, if at the end of the day, nothing is being offered to the society or the civilization beyond tech or beyond arbitrary hierarchy, there's really nothing that actually produces the flourishing. There's no telos, there's no purpose for life. It's, again, just another version of a technocratic model, but maybe not a leftist version or something. So, but for this is very short-sighted, what I'm trying to say. It's very reductionistic, right? And this is common amongst the Silicon Valley technocratic elite types, and Yarvin and Land are very influential on those individuals. Even, Peter Thiel talks now about Christianity, Antichrist, and all this, but it's a lot of the Christian verbiage sort of repackaged and retooled to actually mean Bayes technocracy, supposedly. So, but what is that? Is that really realistic? Well, what happens with a lot of nerdy guys and tech-minded guys and Lord of the Rings fans is that they live in their mind. They're kind of like communists, except that communists think that their ideals can be forced into reality. Or the right-wing technocrat thinks that his fantasy LARP of Lord of the Rings and, living in some sort of a feudal city-state like John Galt, it's not reality, because you've got to have something more than the promise of transhumanism or something like that, because humans need worship. They need cycles of life. They need patterns that they go through. So, for example, in the Orthodox Church, we have the liturgical year, the liturgical cycle. We have Christmas, we have Easter, we have Pentecost. We have these very important cycles that reflect not some distant, amorphous, ambiguous future, but also the past. And so you can't have meaning without having grounded, transcendent patterns from the past. One of the strengths of the Christian narrative, even if you disagree with it, is that it talks about where man's coming from, what man's mistakes are, what man's virtues and vices are, and where he's going. So it gives meaning to history. Systems that are nihilistic and technocratic, even if they're right-wing and based, don't give man those things. They cannot of their nature. All they could say is something kind of like communism of, we're looking towards an eschatological end times goal of the withering away of the state, right? That's the communist Marxist promise. Free stuff, do what you want all day long. Maybe eventually the state withers away. And if you go back to older Marxists, classical Marxists, they actually, some of them wrote that technology would be the means by which the state would wither away and man would be able to live freely doing whatever he wants. Many people don't know that classical Marxism is actually libertarian. Yes, you heard me right. I know that many libertarians will lose their mind when I say that, but that's actually true. Marx believed in the withering away of the state. That's the libertarian goal. Marx disagreed on the means to get there and what you do along the way. So certainly he's not principled in a sort of libertarian sense, but he did believe that eventually there would be the achieving of a stateless world and perhaps some kind of utopia. He didn't think this was necessary or determined, but possible. So likewise, the libertarian believes that the best possibility for man is, I don't know, a floating Bitcoin island fortress or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but Galt's Gulch maybe. So both of these are very idealistic. Both of these are very fantasy-based, you could say. And certainly we have to have some realm of imagination and fantasy that allows us to consider the possibilities of what we want to shoot for. But societies, as even Plato understood, can't hold together and can't cohere if there's not at least some common narrative. Plato called it the noble lie, which is a religious deception that you use to kind of hold the society together. The elites, people at the top, the oligarchs, the philosopher kings, they know that it's not really true, but it's very useful to achieve societal cohesion. And the problem is that a lot of these narratives tend to break down, right? The Enlightenment narrative is breaking down. Classical liberalism is breaking down. Monopolistic capitalism is breaking down. Americanism is breaking down. So what do we replace it with? Well, a lot of philosophers, a lot of technocrats are thinking, we will give you the answer. We will give you this technocratic, supposed quasi-utopian option or whatever. It won't be leftist, it'll be bathed in right-wing technocracy, right? But none of these solutions are actually grounded in anything historical. That's the problem, is that these technocrats and these dorks are so abstract and fantasy-oriented and sci-fi-oriented in their thinking, they act like you can just ignore history and man's origins. Man is just, again, another kind of movable, replaceable economic unit, and you can just exchange him and interchange him with any other economic unit or product. But that's not true, because man has racial, historical, genetic memories. He has a bloodline. He has a lineage. You know, when you read the Bible talks quite a bit about bloodlines of father of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so. In the Gospels, it's very important that, for example, Jesus be shown to be the descendant of Abraham and the descendant of Adam, because otherwise he doesn't fulfill these promised prophecies of a biological descendant. Now, I'm not saying that everything hinges on biology or the biological determinism or blood and soil or the be-all, end-all, but I'm saying that those things do matter. They can matter. And what most of us don't do is place things in hierarchies of importance. So for many people, especially in America, outside of the idol of football, the idol of politics is their number 2 idol. Americans believe so intently in the power of politics that it is almost the real religion of Americanism. Americanism is more important than actual church history. It's more important than Jesus. It's more important than all of these things. And that's one of the problems in America, is the idea that our solutions will come either through the market, GDP, or through political action. Now, am I saying that politics doesn't matter, that economics doesn't matter? No, but for many, many people, that is their idol, that is their focus. But you cannot build a civilization. Take, for example, the Christianizing of the Roman Empire. The longest living, most successful civilization in the West was Byzantium. The Byzantine Empire had a flourishing Byzant currency based on gold that lasted for centuries. Eventually, they fell prey to everybody else's temptation, which was to practice money clipping and to debase their currency. Now, we have the possibility in our society of turning to something even better than gold, something like Bitcoin. And Trump kind of sees that a little bit. He changed his mind, and that was a great thing. But then now they've switched, maybe it needs to be this CBDC to prop up the dollar and this and that. But that's not the focused laser eyes of the original Bitcoin insight that Trump seemed to kind of be on board with. I'm just using that as an example, because civilizations like Byzantium that flourish, they didn't flourish because of some future-only oriented enterprise or some idealistic promise or something like that. They flourished because Orthodox Christianity helped them flourish. Orthodox churches are tripling. They're growing like crazy. In fact, we just had one of the metropolitans, I think, of the Antiochians, just give an entire lecture on how surprising it is to see this explosion of Orthodox Christianity in America. Now, that is a kind of faith and is a kind of belief system that has tried and true built actual empires in the past. I'm not saying that the goal, first and foremost, of Orthodox Christianity is to build an empire. We're not primarily temporally oriented. But the most important thing here is a hierarchy of importance, putting things in their proper order. And that's something that we don't hear about in modern discourse. Everything is either ors. You're either into Jesus or you're into politics. You're either into this or you're into that. Well, why can't we have things in hierarchies of importance? Remember when J.D. Vance said something that was pretty common sense and obvious, right? The principle of subsidiarity. I care the most about those closest to me in terms of proximity. You could think about it in concentric circles. Do I care about what's happening in Africa, the Middle East, China? Sure, but that's not something that I can immediately affect. My immediate circles, my local county, city, etc., that's much more relevant and local. And so my love and attention and focus should first and foremost be on those people. Oh, well, I guess you hate all the people in China and you hate the people in Palestine. No, it's a degree of importance. It's a hierarchy of first and foremost, right? But everything is always cast in terms of these false either ors. Well, either you support what's happening in the Middle East and you talk about it every day, or you hate them. Well, what if I have priorities about that? What if Orthodox Christianity is the priority above the politics? Does that mean I don't care about politics? I hate politics? I hate people involved? No, it's just silly. It's just childish. In the discourse, the trolling, all this stuff that has emerged, by the way, by design. And if you remember, the NATO cognitive warfare documents talked about weaponizing trolling, that the emotional discourse that occurs on the internet actually causes people to become hypersensitive, reactionary, and put them into a state of going overboard. I'm not saying you can't post memes and be ridiculous. I do that all the time, but the discourse is becoming more and more toxic, more and more radical, more and more compartmentalized in the sense of like people are choosing their sides. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing because we're forced to this situation. We are probably going to see a kind of disintegration of the West and a kind of returning to like. People are going to decide that, okay, I'm not welcome in these, leftist cities. Maybe I need to stick to people who have the ideas and the ideology that I have. So people are, I think, going to start building communities around like-minded people. We're going to see people creating Christian villages, Christian societies, Christian communities. This is already beginning where people are starting to, for example, create Orthodox Christian homesteads and villages with that kind of a mindset. And I'm sure other groups will do likewise. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's unfortunate, I guess, that we have to go into this kind of a situation. But the left, the establishment, they are forcing this. They are forcing people into these enclaves, and they're intentionally causing and creating this kind of radicalization. And it is what it is. It's not going to be stopped. But I would say it's very important not to fall for entrapment, not to fall for ridiculous idealistic schemes of, let's go take Washington and we're going to destroy the government. We're going to set up a militia of a Christian patriot government. This kind of stuff could very easily turn into a honey trap, honey pot kind of operation. Before Charlottesville, I was telling the right-wing people to be careful. I wouldn't be directly involved in that. And lo and behold, that's what happened. I'm not saying it's wrong to protest. I'm just saying that these kinds of events are very easily coerced and seduced into being honey trap operations. And what do we know? Well, now J6 turns out, allegedly, we have this identified Capitol Police woman who's now been recruited allegedly into the CIA, they say. Again, backing up the countless federal operatives that were in the crowd. It's just everything constantly more and more looks like what we always thought, that this was a kind of a planned operation. I'm not blaming people that went. I'm not saying that you're bad if you went and protested. I'm saying that you have to understand that the system is not as stupid as they often portray themselves. They are very cunning, and they will utilize every trick in the book to try to destroy and take down the awakening and the emerging reaction against this insane socialist leftist cult that has taken over the West, that has a stranglehold on the West. And it's not just Jews and Zionism, although they do play a key role in this power structure. They wouldn't be able to do that if they didn't have all the support from very powerful, very numerous numbers of leftists and individuals in the West. So it's a combined effort of people who have horrible, evil worldviews working together, cross purposes, to bring down America, to bring down Western civilization, and to implement this globo technocracy that they are absolutely hell-bent on bringing in. And that's exactly what Changing Images of Man is all about. This was the kind of textbook that, you know, people at the Kissinger level, people at the Silicon Valley elite level, when they were going to Stanford, when they were taking their grad classes and studying international relations and studying world systems and world order, they were doing their systems analysis studies and PhDs. This is the textbook that they use. There's a reason why this is $1,000 or $2,000 on Amazon and out of print. It's because it's not for everybody. This was not a textbook meant for you. You know, when you're in college or in grad school, you know, your textbooks, even when they're new, they're like $200, $300, $400. Crazy, right? This textbook in 1982 was probably $100, right? It wasn't meant for a mass audience. And mass audiences don't read these kinds of books anyway, right? Just like Tragedy and Hope. People say, why would they put it in a book? Well, that was not a book in the 1960s and 70s written for a mass audience. They could rest assured the masses are not going to read this book. So we have a unique situation where even though the masses don't read anymore, they are and can pick up on true information and what's really going on through the internet. And unfortunately, I think they're trying to destroy the internet. I think the internet is going to be flooded with just slop, AI slop everywhere. Everything's already been, you know, websites have been sort of de-emphasized and deflected through, you know, Google search and all that, to where now everybody's forced onto the major social media platforms, all of which is controlled through the algorithm. I was looking at my Instagram the other day and I noticed that I was never notified, or if it was in some random notification that I never saw, that, well, actually my account was shadow banned for the last 3 years because I posted 3 years ago about Jeffrey Dahmer having a satanic altar that he built, which is true, it's admitted. But that violated the community guidelines. And the only reason I'm saying this is just that, well, I didn't even know. So my growth was stunted for 3 years because there was this hidden thing 5 pages deep into Instagram of posting something that isn't even a community guideline strike. So the algorithms are what control perception now. That's why it's absolutely essential to go to X, to follow Alex, go to X, follow Harrison, go to X, follow me, go to my YouTube channel, follow it, turn on the notifications, because I lecture on this stuff and have lectured on this stuff for 15 years now. And props to Alex for being such a trooper, such a pioneer in terms of waking so many people up. He's done a great service to humanity. We should thank God every day for Alex